Good evening, and welcome to the No Commercial Potential Show here on Cosmos Astrum Radio. I'm your host, Brad Wallace, and if you're tuning in for the first time, thanks for joining us. I'm happy to say that you found a very positive space here, because on this show we explore the lives of people from around the world, from all walks of life, and from throughout history, who had every reason to believe that their lives would not amount to much, but who are today household, even iconic names. In our first episode, we explored the life and works of the late great Frank Zappa, from whom the name of the show and of my fake band is derived. Early in his career, Zappa sent off samples of his work to various record companies, and one of them wrote back, returning his recordings, saying that while they were frankly in awe of his incredible musical ability and creativity, they sadly felt that his work had no commercial potential whatsoever. The No Commercial Potential banner, however, isn't just a clever band name or an event in one musician's life. It's a metaphor for everyone who took their best shot at greatness, and even just their best shot at goodness within their own lives, and were told, you can't do that, by people purportedly in the know about what can and cannot be done. So this show is about the people who faced down the naysayers, some of whom residing even in their own hearts, and if they didn't always realize their dreams during their lifetimes, left something lasting, beautiful, and important behind them for the rest of us.
Some say you are what you read. Others say you are what you watch. Many who came before them no doubt said, you are what you eat. Some are vegetarian, even vegan. Some are fed by meat. Still others are fed by sound. So it's my great good fortune tonight to sit down with the great Mark GRIDER, the one-man band behind the alternative prog rock phenom FEDBYSOUND. I've known Mark now for several years through Twitter. I've checked out his music from time to time, and we've supported each other's work over the years, but I'm sad to say that I've never dived deeply into the music of FEDBYSOUND until quite recently. I knew that Mark had chops, and I knew they were tasty. Until too recently, embarrassingly recently, I just didn't know they were gourmet. If you go looking for online information about FEDBYSOUND, or about Mark GRIDER for that matter, you won't find too much. That's because the artist with whom I have the privilege of chatting tonight is not only a compositional genius, but one of the most unfailingly humble human beings I've yet encountered. If you tag Mark on Twitter to submit his best song as part of a thread, he'll probably answer, I don't think of myself as having a best song, but thank you for thinking of me. In fact, when I asked Mark GRIDER if he'd be a guest on this show, he initially declined. Very politely, but he declined. He said he was honored to be asked, but he didn't think he was qualified, didn't have much in the works at the moment, and was, quote, just another trough in the sine wave of life, end quote. Thankfully, with a little cajoling from yours truly, our guest tonight had a change of heart. Independent recording artists don't just write the music. They record it too, usually serving as their own producer, their own roadie if they tour, their own management, their own booking agents, and their own promoters. Most indie artists will promote their work as much as they can when they can. Some promote themselves aggressively and round the clock, and some of them have even looked, well, a little like me from time to time. But don't look online for signs of even terribly assertive self-promotion of FEDBYSOUND. You won't find it. No t-shirts, no 2-for-1 sales, no reaching out to radio stations for interviews, in fact, seemingly turning some of them down. You won't even find a FEDBYSOUND website. You will find this on the Tune Bubble site, though. FEDBYSOUND offers a unique blend of alternative and progressive rock, with influences ranging from Soundgarden to Rush, A Perfect Circle, and Tool. Mark GRIDER is the creative force behind this one-man music project based in Southern California. Focused on capturing and conveying the emotional essence of the song, FEDBYSOUND explores topics that consume a contemplative mind, producing a modern sound that is reminiscent of while expanding upon the rock of the 1990s. FEDBYSOUND's guitar-laden tracks transport the listener with engaging riffs and rich, often atmospheric melodies. Mark uses his baritone vocals to enhance the mood of the music, often changing his timbre to fit the emotion of the song. This soundscape is driven by a rhythm section that features active, integral bass lines and prominent, intricate drum parts. FEDBYSOUND continues to gain momentum, winning over fans with sincerity and a passion for making music that resonates deeply with thoughtful, caring humans. Voted Artist of the Week on SLE Radio last November, Fed by Sound and the man behind it offer an artistry and humble tribute to the past while anticipating a bold future, all in ways that are too often overlooked or even missing in modern music, in my opinion. As with my last guest, the great Leon Russell of Warm Rain, while Mark and I have chatted many times over the years, this will be the very first time we've ever talked face-to-face, albeit through Zoom, as Mark is across the continent on the west coast of those United States, and I am way to the east in Ontario, Canada. So I've really been looking forward to this. Before the great conversation begins, however, let me wet your whistle with a Fed by Sound future classic. This is an absolutely brilliant instrumental from a brilliant album of instrumentals under the Fed by Sound banner. You're listening to the No Commercial Potential Show on Cosmos Astrum Radio. I'm your host, Brad Wallace, and this, from the Without Words album by tonight's guest, the one the only Mark Grider of Fed by Sound, is Better Day. And that was Better Day from the 2021 Fed by Sound album Without Words. Rather aptly named, as it's an album made up entirely of instrumentals. This was one of the many compelling reasons why I worked so hard to convince Mark to come on the show tonight. And that album instantly became a new favorite of mine. You'll be hearing more of it tonight, and you're in for a treat. Now, without further ado, it's my privilege to introduce the man behind tonight's music, one of many unsung musical geniuses in the modern music scene, whose praises we will sing tonight. I give you Mark GRIDER of Fed by Sound. Mark, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Brad. Although I have to say I do feel a little bit uncomfortable with all the kind words that you've used about me.
Well, I can only, at least I can tell you that they're sincerely meant, and that they are true.
Well, you're too kind.
Is there anyone you want to say hello to out there?
I mean, everyone. I don't like to name specific names because that's always at the cost of the names that I did not name, right?
I totally get that. Everyone, Mark says hello. I can tell you on behalf of everyone, they're really glad to hear from you.
Excellent.
You're joined the Half Century Plus Club in April. Happy belated birthday.
Yeah, thank you. It's great to be old.
Yeah. Well, yeah, as I used to tell people before I crossed over, it may be 50 whole years, but it's only half a century, right?
Right. Yeah, I mean, I feel mostly the same, except now I have to wear the silly glasses that help me read my phone.
Good Lord. Yes. One of the, they say there are only 7 signs of aging. I'm counting way more, but 5, like before noon most days. So,
yeah.
Tell us a bit about your occupation outside of music.
Well, I don't have one, right? So I was a salesperson for many years, so selling industrial construction and safety products. And just before the pandemic, my wife and I decided that it would be best for our family if I retired early during the critical years, preteen and teenage years of our son's existence, so that I may free up our schedule collectively to improve the quality of his childhood. And
wonderful. I think you may, I mean, we had this conversation before, but I think you may be the only person I know who has done that. And I tell you, I often think of how wonderful that is and how I wished I had been able to do that.
Yeah, I completely accept how lucky I am, beyond luck. And my wife is amazing in her support of our household, right, and my endeavors. She really just wants to see me happy, and that sometimes it is incredible, and sometimes I'm a little self-defeating in that department, but I do my best, and she absolutely supports every effort that I put into making myself happy and our family in general happy. So I've got nothing but luxury problems. Life is good. And I'm
nothing but luxury. That sounds like a song title in the works. Nothing but luxury problems. Mark, you're a multi-instrumentalist, and I think the only musician in your family of origin. Is that right?
Yes, that is correct. I didn't grow up around music other than the radio, an occasional 8-track tape, and some cassettes. But mostly music wasn't that much of a feature in my childhood.
What's your earliest memory of love for music, and when did you first know you wanted to make it?
Well, my earliest memory of love for music was Another Brick in the Wall by Pink Floyd. I think that was the one when I was very young, right?
Sure.
Was I 7, 8, something like that?
Yeah.
And then so that was like the first song that I really remembered sticking out. That was like a my thing, right? It wasn't the family thing, it was my thing.
Right.
And then for my 9th birthday, I got Queen The Game on 8-track because, I think I liked Another One Bites the Dust when it came on the radio. But once again, that was like in passing. I liked it, but it really wasn't a key feature of my life. It wasn't until my best friend's older brother gave us a mixtape with The Who, George Thorogood, and Rush on it. Initially, it was The Who that kind of got me interested. Then obviously George Thorogood makes good songs. I like that too. And then Rush was this other thing. But the thing about Rush, especially for those like early on, for at least the people I know, like it was one of those, it took a little time to get into, but there's so much there. It just rewards the additional listens.
Yes.
And that was the thing that really hooked both me and my best friend Mike. And over time and listening to more Rush, it was, that adolescent fantasizing about what you could be in life and just being mesmerized by
I have no idea
amazing.
What you're talking about.
Right? I don't know if it's
I can't relate to that at all. Yeah.
Exactly, right? I think sometimes I still fantasize about what I may be in life. I haven't given up yet completely, but so that was...
Wondering what I might do when I grow up myself.
Exactly, yeah. And that's eventually, what made me want to be a musician to the point where, like, that's what I wanted to do with my life. And then, life gets in the way. Then I realized, had a band of me, my friend Mike, and a drummer who was a friend of ours as well. We wanted to be Rush, and we wrote a bunch of originals. We had like 40 originals.
Wow.
We played out a bit. Claim to fame's like, ooh, we paid to play the Roxy. I played the Roxy in Hollywood. It only cost me $350 to open for some crazy band called Ambush. That was like an 80s glam band. I think we played for
You played the Roxy. You made that happen.
Yeah, I played the Roxy to like 9 people. So yeah. I could make it sound greater than it was, but it's just part of the game. And honestly, experiencing it and a couple of the other shows really led to me accepting that while I enjoyed, no, that's understatement, while I loved playing as a band and playing live, the nightlife and the touring and all of the uncertainty and, in all likelihood, financial ruin, trying to play, wannabe prog in the early 90s, like it just kind of dawned on me that probably wasn't the right path for my life. And
even especially then, when there was a kind of I would say coming out of the 80s in progressive music, and as with jazz perhaps, there was a kind of retrenchment and an almost refit of the genre to make it a bit more accessible, I think. So even progress like Rush and Genesis and Yes were retooling, I would say. So it would be an especially difficult time for one to break out into that genre, I would say.
Well, yeah, and it's questionable as to whether or not we were any good, right? The self-doubt takes over, and we did incorporate many sonic aspects of, that early 90s Seattle and grunge and all things like grunge adjacent, right? So that became a part of a lot of what we were writing because we loved it so much. There was that great balance of intellectualism with emotional depth, and I still think the music of the 90s, like Soundgarden and bands of that ilk were just some of the greatest ever. So
it shines forth, as the listeners will hear tonight, in your music even now. So I can very openly read your passion for the music of that time. What are your instruments as a multi-instrumentalist?
So the primary instrument is guitar, right? So when I first wanted to play music, I wanted drums, and drums in the house was shut down as an idea.
Right.
So acoustic guitar is where I started, begrudgingly, painfully, and eventually got myself an electric guitar. So it was a Carlos acoustic for Christmas, and then eventually I got myself a Celebrity electric guitar, and that just led into obviously being able to play bass. I kind of feel like one kind of goes with the other.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously the approach is slightly different, except if you're, kind of a wannabe Geddy Lee type of player. I overplay. That's, just the kind of bass playing that I love. And then I remember, after finally moving out of my parents' house, and I had been working a good job, had graduated from college, and saved up all my money and spent all my savings on a V-drum kit. Because my friend who had an electronic kit, had left it with me, and I spent probably 3 or 4 hours a day for 6 months playing drums. And then he wanted it back, and so I just plopped down all my cash and got that. So I'm an okay drummer, but I cannot perform to the level that I expect from my recordings. So that's really where I'm at, is like guitar and bass. I can play drums. I feel like I think like a drummer. That makes sense.
It makes perfect sense to me on my listen to your work, and may I say, if you consider yourself an okay drummer, then a slogan I'm becoming acquainted with is that you're faking it till you've made it quite well.
Thanks. Well, you're not hearing any of the drums that I've played in any of my stuff. That's all programmed.
I see. Ah,
right.
really?
Right. It's all programmed.
Is that right? Wow.
Yeah. So my process typically is to use Apple's Logic Pro Drummer as a starting point, and then convert to MIDI and edit the minute details and different things that I want incorporated.
It sounds so organic and
Thanks.
MIDI.
That's intentional, and sometimes it's a result of painstaking MIDI edits where velocity, or actually where it's hitting in time, shifting things ever so slightly. There's also the algorithm-based modification that you can do, where you can actually put out the Logic drummer, then play your guitar part, and then you can have that Logic drummer follow the guitar part, so it gets more close in time. So if you play with a certain feel, either ahead or behind the beat, it can get closer to where you're at and be less metronomic.
Is that right?
Yeah, but it's not like perfect to what I'd want. So I then, after doing that kind of modification, will go in and edit so that accents are where I want them, open hi-hats happen where I want them, crashes happen where I want them. And that's probably among the most time-consuming aspect, other than simply mixing, because I'm a perfectionist, I guess. I don't know. And I would never say that my mixes are perfect, because they're not. But I certainly try,
Well, I would say you succeed. I was imagining, as I listened especially to When Did You Get Here, which we're going to hear tonight, a Dr. GRIDER Stein in his laboratory, with a scapular and a microscope going through each track, and I don't think that's too far from the truth. Yes.
It's not. That one has inordinate amount of edits involved.
I can only begin to imagine, and I'm sure I heard less than half of them. FEDBYSOUND, all one word. What does the name mean, and where did it come from for you?
I pulled it out of the air. I don't know. What does it mean? I get sustenance from music, right? It's as obvious as one would think, and so when you're young and you fancy yourself as a quasi-musician, although I don't really typically refer to myself as a full-fledged musician. I don't accept that title. I don't know why, but here I am. It's always that quest for the good band name.
Yes.
And in the early 2000s, that came to me and has stuck ever since. So that would be like the name I would use, just floating around the internet for things. And then I actually put out an album in 2013, I think, under a different band name.
What was that name?
Silly Music, Dry Humpbacks.
Oh, right,
so
right.
Very tongue-in-cheek.
Yes.
Sexual innuendos.
Kind of Zappa-esque.
Yeah, and stuff like that was designed that I could sing and play at the same time and whatever. And,
Dry
that was like...
Humpbacks, I love it.
Right, yeah. So that was that first foray into the world of trying to accomplish the life goal of, I can put an album together, and
yes,
that is an example of, early learning how to mix and make things sound not terrible. Me learning how to sing because historically my singing has been terrible, and it's still very shaky. I lean very heavily on pitch correction, and I'm not afraid to admit it.
Huh?
But there is no app that has emotional correction. So, and maybe one day we'll get there, but for me, like when I record vocals, I would always have wanted to make what FEDBYSOUND ultimately became. When I was at the point of making Dry Humpbacks, I wasn't there. I was not able to express musically the way that I, feel like I've finally kind of achieved. And for whatever reason, it took so many years. But so that's where you'll hear the difference in that project, right? But then ultimately, when it came to making FEDBYSOUND, what's interesting is it actually started with 3 of the instrumentals, and I do not remember which ones. I could probably go back and figure it out, that wound up on Without Words.
Ah, is that right? So someone go way back.
Yeah, they go way back before me putting vocals to songs in that FEDBYSOUND manner. And from there, it was Speakeasy was probably the first. Between that one and I think that was the first one that really stuck. Like when I made that music, you know what, I could maybe actually do that heavier alternative rock prog project. And my best friend Mike still was a nice sounding board, and I was like, hey, I'm just kind of working on this. It started out as an instrumental, like the heavier rock instrumental, and he's like, man, that's great, you should throw vocals on it. And so I tried it, and he was just encouraging, and so one thing led to another. I think I started that in like 2017, and over the course of the following 2 years, the songs came, and I was able to kind of put it together in a way and to a level that met my standards.
What I'm hearing from you as you speak, and this is no surprise to me, is an underlying, I venture, well-articulated personal philosophy around making music. How would you describe that philosophy? Presuming that you have one, and I know you must.
It's interesting. I don't know that I have a philosophy per se, right? For me, the music that I love, it's always that thing that about you love it. Can you even describe it? What it is that makes you love it? What's interesting is when looking back, as fun as Dry Humpbacks was and is, and my wife still loves it, for me, I like it. And there's a special part in my heart, but it's not the stuff that just gets me deep down to the core, the essence of my being. And that is what FEDBYSOUND, the project for me, really chases. It's not about, I wrote a song for you all your fans, right? they like it. I'm going to write one more like this. It's like, no, it has nothing to do with the outside world. It's just me trying to dig deep and to create something that makes those deep feelings in me happen, right? I'm looking for the magic. It's just searching for the magic. That magic that I got from listening to Xanadu in the dark, when I was a kid, or listening to Close to the Edge, or whatever it was, Soundgarden, any of it. It just gets you and you can't explain it. That's what it's about. That has nothing to do with how many times some people I don't even know stream my music. That doesn't even make sense to me. I tried a little bit of self-promotion when it started, and ironically, I was in sales. I had a whole career in sales, but self-promotion, no thank you. I mean, it's nauseating. And it's just not worth it. I would rather work at a gas station and make the music I want to make and have no one ever hear it than to be put in a position where I have to go say, hey, everybody, pay attention to the thing that means a whole lot to me. I don't expect anybody to like it. But I put it out there just in case, right? Because there's some deeply personal songs from the bands that I love, Alice in Chains. I think about the song like Nutshell. It's like, wow, the bravery that it took to actually put yourself in that song and put it out there. I'm so glad that they did. And, ultimately, I was convinced by some friends. It's like, hey, yeah, maybe, you should release that stuff. It's good. And so I said, okay, I'll release it. And that's part of, the dream. Like, oh yeah, I wanted to do it. And I did it. And then it's like, well, I should probably put it out there. So yeah, am I conflicted about the whole idea of having my music in the world? Sure. Do I sometimes have moments and moods where I decide, or I think about just deleting it all and taking it down? Of course. But, silliness, it comes and goes. So I just got to treat it like the weather.
Please never do that. Day. Please never do that.
All right. Well,
if only for my sake, and certainly for the sakes of the many who to whom your music has come to mean something important, and happily by attraction, if not by promotion. So I mean, I think that's. I think you may have touched upon a philosophy around music about creating what was magical for you in the past, regardless of whether it sells or is attractive, but hoping perhaps to reach some on the same level you were reached, if that's not going too far on my part.
No, I appreciate you summarizing that, because I certainly went off the rails and didn't answer your question really.
No, I think you did very well. And well, some of what you just talked about goes nicely into the next question, which is, as you know, the theme of this show is the stories of people from around the world and from all walks of life who may have had good reason to believe that their lives might not amount to much, but who today have a voice, and in some cases are even household names. You have a voice through music, and I can tell you on a deeply personal level, it's a very respected one. When in your past did circumstances lead you to believe that your life might not amount to much?
When was there a time in my past that I had something that might make me think that it would amount to anything?
It may not surprise you that as I wrote that question last night, I anticipated that very answer from you.
Again, the youthful dreaming, you think, yeah, I could just go and travel the world and be a musician and all of those things. And then I realized that that's all of the things, well, maybe not all of them, right? But the bulk of the things with that, it's not what I wanted. And then it's just a matter of, living life. I think there's often that tug of war internally with people who are compelled to create. there's always that carrot, right? You have intellectual property that could be exploited to your benefit. You make a song, and who knows? Who knows what could happen? Somebody could hear it, and they'd ask you, "Hey, I've got a deal for you," and you can maintain your rights and still, like, who knows? But I also recognize that the odds of that happening are astronomical, and I'm not going to drive myself crazy worrying about it. If it turns out that I have a voice, I mean, I'm just one voice among billions per se, right? I mean, okay, maybe not billions are releasing content, but it feels like it.
Sure.
But I'm just one human, right? And all I can do with my art is try to be as honest with myself as I can. And if that means something to someone else, then that is awesome. I get it, right? So that's, you look at my album titles, the first one is Resonate. It was a desire, like, this is stuff that's deeply personal to me. I'm going to put it out there, see if it resonates with anyone. The second album title, Imperfect. Once I put the first one out, like, okay, there were things that I felt like stylistically could have been a little more cohesive or whatever, or maybe the mix in some way wasn't as great as I'd wanted, or whatever it is. I'm an imperfect person making imperfect art, but it's who I am, it's what I do. Without Words was a surprise release, kind of. I released it on my birthday. It was a collection of instrumentals that I'd put together, a bit off the course of what the normal Fed by Sound albums were. And then, understanding, once again, that last, or most recent last, however you want to say it, that album, for me, is all about trying to understand myself, trying to find understanding, exploring what the concept of even understanding is. Like, do we think we understand? We have some working definition of whatever it is we're looking at, but do we even really understand? I think that kind of theme comes up quite a lot in my songs, of not fully recognizing, or at least recognizing, that our perception is limited to what we perceive.
And that seems to be something very deeply at the core of, in my experience, how Mark GRIDER sees the world and his place in it. I've actually heard you say some variation on that statement a number of times in our interactions.
Yeah, well,
over the years.
that's very on brand for me, isn't it?
Yes. Yeah.
It's interesting. Like, everybody's got their viewpoint, their perspective. I think it's tragically common that many people don't actually stop and ask themselves whether or not they're right, or if they could be wrong. I probably do it a little too much, but that's just the way I'm wired. And I've tried to have a positive bias. I've tried to think positive thoughts, and I do. The thing that works most for me dealing with darkness is focusing on gratitude. So I know how cliche that may sound, but it works, at least for me. And you'll hear me always put in the qualifier, well, it's for me. Like, other things are going to work for other people. If you want to get under my skin, make some blanket proclamations about what art is, or what qualifies as good songwriting, or, and so I try to keep my cool, but every once in a while somebody will say that, and I want to respond, but it's fine. Hey, I think art's a very personal thing. I'm not going to say somebody's process or creation is better than somebody else's. I may have my own personal feelings about it, but if it works for you, it works for you.
Sure.
So,
and I don't think you mentioned gratitude being in some sense cliche, and I suppose in the sense that the attitude of gratitude is talked about an awful lot in recent years. There is a sense in which mechanically it becomes cliche through the amount of its use, but cliches become cliches because they're true.
Yes.
And I can testify, I think, to the overriding importance of a renewed gratitude in my life, and I'm especially grateful to have come to know you, to be able to speak with you tonight, and to have been introduced more deeply to your work. Speaking of which, Better Day, what a beautifully playful and intriguing piece. It's so richly textured, so many atmospheres and emotions, with just enough tension to keep you thinking, but all the while with this abiding assurance that everything's going to be okay.
Thank you.
What was this song's inspiration? Where did Better Day come from?
Well, okay, so any of the titles were applied after the songs were written. I think I probably had working titles for maybe most of them, and they fit just fine. For me, it was about trying to create a space that I can get lost in. So that's pretty common for me when I approach music, is to just dive into a pool of emotion and see what sounds, what textures, different layers can take me there and keep me there and move me around a little bit in the process. So I recall with A Better Day, I was really trying to expand what I was doing harmonically with my music. So there's a lot of layers, and that's kind of typical of a lot of my music and a lot of the way I write. So the way I'll write is oftentimes I'll start with some basic drum part and then just start adding parts on top of it and layer them. And then I'll find an arrangement that moves me where parts will come in and out. And it's interesting, like a lot of mixers will talk about, highlighting a feature, pick the most important thing in that moment and really let that shine. And yeah, typically vocals do that, and that's fine. But for me, the way I like to hear things, I really want kind of everything to happen all at once.
Right.
And I want it to make sense. And what happens, like when I'm listening or creating like a song like A Better Day, is like I can listen to it more than once, and it's almost a different song when you listen to it multiple times, because there are things happening simultaneously in kind of different directions. Rather than, there's so many different ways to write. Have a part, have it unison, have harmonies, whatever. But I do like that interplay of parts that are both connected, but then they, diverge, converge. And so that, I think it's a pretty decent example of how my brain wants to hear things.
Well, I may be misusing the term, but what came to mind for me in all of the pieces, including the three we're hearing tonight from Without Words, was a theme of counterpoint.
Yes.
That is very much a feature of your music. As you say, there's an awful lot going on. And I would say that there is this thread throughout everything that I heard of music that you could listen to over and over and over again and find something different each time, simply by zeroing in on one of the contrapuntal themes going on. And there's often four of them.
Yeah, and if I'm doing things the way I want, if you're hearing like melodic ideas that kind of like imagine going for a hike, and you're in the forest and there are paths that lead around this group of trees or back over here, and so there's a melodic idea that you can follow the one guitar part. This is how I listen to it anyways. You can follow the one guitar part, or when that bass line really kind of picks up halfway through that guitar part, you can kind of follow that around. So that's how, I listen. a combination of listening to everything all at once, but then also really kind of focusing in on different components and elements. And all that's well and good, but if the gestalt of the piece, if the overall emotion doesn't carry me down the river, you know, in the way that I want it, whether it be, you know, just a little stream or roaring rapids, like that's the goal. Because there's some music that's very counterpoint focused that for me is kind of a bit cacophonic. It's a little too much, and that's fine.
And that is a signature of all of the work of yours that I have heard. There, you have a gift for packing so much that's perfectly worthwhile into a song. So many melodic themes happening all at once without it ever becoming noise. And yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
No, that's that's just a byproduct, I feel, of kind of the way I'm writing. Is it's almost like a jam, like whatever. It's 4 times through the part, and you play it in a cycle, and so it's either the guitar first or the bass first, and the idea comes down, and then there's another idea, and then there's another guitar in a different area of the neck or a different register or a different, and it's just layering the parts and playing until I hear like, yeah, that works.
Well, 2 things. First of all, the first ever use of the word gestalt on this program occurred tonight, and so that prize goes to Mr. Grider. So thank you for that. But secondly, we talked about moving through the forest. So let's do that. Let's move into the forest, into about one of the trees. So I'd love to take us now into our second selection from the Fed by Sound catalog tonight. I know you're going to love it. Once again, you're listening to the No Commercial Potential show here on Cosmos Astrum Radio. I'm your host, Brad Wallace. And this is Healing Dawn by Fed by Sound. That was Healing Dawn by Fed by Sound. We're here with Mark Grider, the one-man force of nature behind Fed by Sound. And Mark, what I love about this piece, as with everything of yours I've explored so far, is the occasional whispered rumor here and there, something approaching dissonance, kind of tension bordering on disorder now and again, hinting that something may be amiss without ever breaking the promise of better day that everything's going to be all right. But what strikes me most is your incredible knack for counterpoint, once again. I mean, good God, man, pick a melodic theme and go with it.
I will not commit.
I'm obviously kidding, but I am in awe, deep respect from one musician to another. There's just so much going on within this song. I could and I may well listen to this piece 1,000 times and still hear something new and compelling within it. On top of that, there's this incredibly gratifying move from what I think is a major 7th chord structure. Am I right about that?
Yeah, sure. No, probably. Like, so I tend, on the bulk of my work, to write in minor scales, right? So there was intention with the use of major scales in a couple of pieces on Without Words. And then for me, for my ear, it's always going to be a blend of major leaning into minor modes, that kind of thing, because, you know, a little too happy and it feels like trite and silly. I think one of the reasons I like counterpoint or layered parts is because of all the little incidental, often accidental harmonies that are generated in passing notes, happy accidents, happy rhythmic phrases that occur as a result of counterpoint. And yeah, so it's all just me kind of enjoying having fun and seeing what strikes me, you know, follow the muse.
Well, and what you said earlier about, you know, into the happy, that's what really struck me about the changes in Healing Dawn. We go from this almost mysterious, almost cloud-like experience, a meditative kind of experience, into something unreservedly just happy.
Yeah.
Beautifully done.
Well, thank you. And that was the goal. It was to try to find, you know, that the mystery of suspensions, right? Using the fourths and the sixths, the ninths, and then leaning into the major seventh, the major third, those intervals, and how they make you feel. It's all about that, connecting to that feeling, finding the emotion, and trying to see what propels it, and to kind of tell a compelling emotional story, right? Because if it's all just happy, then it feels that reduction through excess, right? Yep. Where it feels like the happy isn't as happy in the absence of some mystery, perhaps, or pain even.
Right. There needs to be some yin and yang happening. Like you need one atmosphere in order to distinguish the other from it, I suppose.
Maybe.
I shouldn't say you need, but
just
been a practice of mine.
Right. The phrase needs to be makes me nervous, right? Because we are talking about art, right? Yes. I think it can be effective to have that. I think it's also possible to just do happy. I don't think I'm personally very good at it. Or maybe I'm insecure. Maybe just my nature makes me feel like it's not a true statement if all I'm doing is just happy, unless I'm doing some tongue-in-cheek sort of thing. So, you know, that's where I'll leave it, I guess. But with the needs to be, I don't know that there needs to be, right? But I often lean into it, the contrast.
Friends, Romans, listeners everywhere, I give you the eminently fair-minded Mark Grider. Where did this piece come from for you? Now you mentioned earlier that, especially on this album, most or all of the tracks had been kind of percolating for quite some time. Was this another piece where the title came to you after it was recorded, or was there a particular set of feelings you wanted to express here?
Yeah, so definitely feelings I wanted to express. I think after the second album, like, my albums have a lot of, I hope they have a lot of hope, but I also feel that there's a decent amount of darkness in dealing with the darker emotions. So after that, I would say when I really started to work on and assemble with the goal of completing the instrumental album without words, I'd probably had half of the songs completed. I'm pretty sure Healing Dawn was not yet written. So that one came together fairly quickly, because that's typically how I work in terms of writing. It's fairly quickly. It's like a jam with myself, and I build from there. But there was that intention, that reaction to, man, it's a lot of darkness. So I want to have some brightness there, right?
And that is a golden thread running through Without Words for me. It's got a lot of great tension within it, but never enough to make one tense. It's a great piece of work to have going on in the background of almost anything for me.
Thank you.
It's very meditative.
I agree. It is the same for me. There's not a lot of minor sixths.
Use us while we geek out here, folks.
Right?
Yeah.
No, like, there's the melancholy sound that I lean into a lot with a lot of my music. It's not that I'm thinking, oh, I'm going to do this and emote this way when I write a song. I just typically will go there, and because it gives me that emotional charge, right? That depth of darkness and whatever. But there's also the benefit of keeping things happy. So yeah, Without Words for me is definitely something that I can listen to if I'm in a bad mood. It works just fine. If I'm in a great mood, it works just fine.
Yeah. It's very, I would say it has a definite kind of therapeutic value, and it's certainly reached into my pantheon of favorites very, very quickly.
Well, thank you.
How would you describe? Now, I mean, you've touched on it a little bit, and I suspect I can anticipate some of it. But an inspiration of mine is Daniel Lanois, who might be better known as a producer of U2 and Peter Gabriel and
of course,
Neil Young and others. But he's also his own work is right near the top for me. But his process, he describes it as being, I sit down, press record, and play until something interesting happens. And it occurs to me and a couple of people I've talked to that there are some who are architects and there are some who are sculptors. The architects tend to plan things out quite meticulously in advance. The sculptors are a bit more like Michelangelo, who said, the sculpture always existed. I was just roughing out the edges. Do you count yourself more of an architect or a sculptor? And what is your process?
Well, I think I'm somewhere in between. I definitely, it's interesting how one might analyze the concept of architect versus sculptor. Like, there are a lot of people who will come up with a song on an acoustic guitar and then build and add, ornamentation and all those things. And that's not typically how I work. That's how I used to work years ago. When I was in a band, it was, start with acoustic guitar almost all the time and the vocalist. But now for me on my own, it's building, it's adding layers. And that idea of, press record and play until you like it. Well, I'm perhaps a little more economical with the record button, but it's loop a part, whether it's usually just a drum part, and see where my hands go. It's typically like me starting with, I kind of want to try this idea, this feel, this mood, and I just play and enjoy it. And when I find something that for me feels like fresh, it's something I haven't really heard before, perhaps, it's like, I like that. So I'll just hit record and then play it 50 times until I've played it to the level that I feel like, okay, either that's good enough or clean enough where I can edit it to my satisfaction, and then rinse and repeat, right? So I just keep adding or move on to the next part. And then oftentimes I'll listen to it. If there's one thing I feel like I'm good at, it's to be able to jump between creator and listener for whatever reason. So I'm quite reactive instantaneously to what I've just done. And from there, I have a sense of, this part kind of leads to this part. Maybe it's because of many years of thinking about what's going on in songs, thinking, using that producer's mind, what makes that emotional response. You want a chorus to hit big. Maybe you got to make the verse small. I started out with a big verse. So how do I do that? Okay, so maybe the pre-chorus, you suck out a bunch of parts and it's just the guitar or just the bass so that the chorus can hit harder. And it's thinking in terms of that approach that, kind of helps move the song along. And then once I have kind of the arrangement kind of moving and working in the way that I want, again, it's back to, that's usually when the drum editing happens. And that just propels the mood even more. And it's just a matter of kind of enhancing the intention. I've heard many mixers and mastering engineers talk about, like, that's the goal of mixing and mastering. And I agree, because I do my own mixing and mastering. Although the pros would just laugh at the fact that somebody's doing it all themselves, and that's fine. My first album was actually mastered by Dave Collins, who's a massive pro, and he absolutely made it sound way better than I ever could. But after spending that money, I decided to just do it myself from then on, because I wasn't going to try to pursue the, financial rewards of creating art. But just that idea of enhancing the intention of the art. And it's really just, what can I do to give that feeling a boost? And so that's kind of my process.
Well, let's further enhance the intention of Fed by Sound's art by dipping our feet back into the river fed by sound with yet another new favorite of mine from the Without Words album. This is the No Commercial Potential Show on Cosmos Astrum Radio. I'm your host, Brad Wallace. We're here with the one-man band behind tonight's music, Mark GRIDER. I give you Make Space. Make Space from FEDBYSOUND's 2021 Without Words album, an album made up entirely of instrumentals. Easy listening music for uneasy minds. This one starts off in a kind of desolation for me. I'm out in a desert somewhere with mesas at dusk. Amazingly complex changes, and have I said it before? Good God, man, pick a lane. There is so much happening here all at once, but without ever overpowering the ear and becoming a cacophony, as you said earlier. It's an absolute delight to the auditory cortex. My one complaint is that I was grooving so deeply at 4 minutes, 16 seconds, and then it's just over. I wanted 4 more minutes. So my question is this.
Just listen again.
Yeah, well, but as a self-styled prog artist, you haven't climbed on the 8 to 20 minute epic bus quite so often. I know that your song Belief, for instance, is a little more than 10 minutes long. In fact, unless I'm mistaken, with a few exceptions, you generally call it a day at about the 5-minute mark. Often less, but rarely more than that, at least among the songs I've checked out. Is that just where songs end for you, or was there a conscious decision to keep them shorter and more accessible?
I just like the statement, the emotional ride of that length. For me, it feels like you can go to a place, maybe make a right and a left turn, return back to the place, and then kind of have that statement. And I like when a song makes me feel like I want to hit replay. I'm definitely the kind of person who I will listen to full albums for sure, but I'll also listen to the same song over and over again.
Sure.
So it's all a byproduct of what I like. Do I like long songs? Sure. But my mind is a busy little bee. So if they drag out too long, I do get bored. Like if there's not enough going on, I'm a very active listener, and I'm typically just listening to music when I'm listening to music. So yeah, I typically like to have that 5-minute mark, because I feel like I've made that complete statement. I have some that are shorter, some that are longer, but I feel like, it's math, right? It's like, sure. There's the tempo, the time signature, how many bars you're going to have, how many ideas you're going to have presented to stay cohesive. So yeah, it works out that way.
How did this one come into being for you?
Yeah, it was that opening part, that opening arpeggio, and then it just kept growing. It is one of my favorites. The volume swells with the bass playing, and that middle where it just meanders. It's one of those things where when I did it, I look back and I'm like, I can't believe I did it. Not saying that it's hard to do, right, or nothing that I really play is hard to play. I don't feel like it's hard to assemble, but when something works and hits me the way that I want it to, it's always like, I can't believe I did that. Yeah. It's a little surreal. I think you know what I mean.
I do. I mean, there's a sense, for me at least, of almost co-creation, in that I'll listen sometimes, and believe me, I understand, and I emphatically underscore what you're saying about, not that I think I'm marvelous, but that I listen and I think, I can't believe that I did that.
Yeah.
And part of it had for me at least, had a source from someplace else. My conversation with Leon Russell last week, I said something similar, and he made a good point, I think, especially for self-effacing types like us, that it's important to acknowledge the good, to acknowledge the some beauty and power or silence or peace that something we've created may impart from time to time. But for me, it's just helpful to acknowledge some external inspiration and perhaps some external source for what happens. But on that note, I know from experience that sometimes you write a song with lyrics, say, and once you've written it, sometimes the words are evocative, but don't necessarily communicate a specific idea. Or maybe you did intend to communicate a specific idea, but you listen to it again, some time passes, and with fresh experience or the benefit of some new insight, the words take on new meaning. I've released songs thinking I knew what they were about, and then years later I listened again and said, oh, that's what that was about, or that's what I was trying to say. Have you ever experienced anything like that with any of your instrumentals? Because instrumentals communicate ideas and feelings, albeit without words. Have you ever had that kind of experience where you've created something and then sometime later it came to mean something else?
Well, that's an interesting take on that question. Is it wrong to say I don't think so?
No.
Oh, and
there are no wrong answers.
Maybe it's because, when I'm creating, I kind of get that sense when you're talking about co-creation, but I don't know that anybody else, either physical or metaphysical, is present. But I do know when I'm in the zone, for lack of better word, right? If I force it, I hate it.
Right. Yes.
It may take me 50 times, 50 takes to get the part the way I want it or whatever. But I know when it's right, and if it's not right, it's not right. When it comes to soloing, with almost no exception, every guitar solo, at least 95% is all improv. Nothing's worked out. And I know when I'm just in the zone, and I'm not technically proficient. I do okay. It's like, hey, slow notes, fast notes, bend some. But it's all about, once again, like, is this pushing the emotion, right? Is it taking it where I want it to go, or where I'm feeling I'm at, really? Am I expressing it adequately, how I feel, or this mindset that I'm in? And so experiencing that and knowing what that song is at the moment, like, I definitely have that sense that the emotion, the feeling, the thoughts, they carry on. So I don't necessarily come back and feel like, oh, well, that maybe I meant this. I don't have that sensation. And especially like with lyrics, because obviously like more of my catalog has lyrics in them. I use metaphor, but I don't write in a way that is vague to me. Like, everything is there with a purpose. Sometimes it's, off the cuff, and one could argue like, oh, well, yeah, but that turn of phrase came from somewhere else. And sure, I can look back and say it applies in these ways as well. They can be interpreted in other ways. When you get to a song like Belief, one can easily misinterpret that song, I guess. But that's mostly because of humans' tendency for confirmation bias, in my opinion.
Yes. Yeah.
I feel like I'm pretty clear. But, I'll just leave that right there.
All right. Well, leaving that there, let's move now from the 2021 Without Words album to 2020's Imperfect. Venture with me now into the grand and complex instrumental from FEDBYSOUND. If you love instrumentals by the likes of Yes and Rush, and well, if you love incredible progressive music, you're really going to love this one. I'm your host, Brad Wallace, here with Mark Grider of Fed by Sound. You're listening to the No Commercial Potential Show on Cosmos Astrum Radio. And this is When Did You Get Here? And that was When Did You Get Here? From Fed by Sound's 2020 album Imperfect. I'm Brad Wallace of the No Commercial Potential Show, and I'm here with Mark Grider, the literal one-man band behind the Terpsichorean genius that is Fed by Sound. You know what I heard in this piece, Mark?
What?
I heard the lead guitar stylings of both Alex Lifeson from the Snakes and Arrows era of Rush, and a wide sampling of Steve Howe from Yes, in or about the time of the Drama album. I don't know how you do it, but it's as if Steve and Alex had a lead guitar love child and named him Mark.
That's funny. Thank you. I don't fancy myself as near the guitarist that they are, but I mean it's obvious that this song is an attempt to stand on the shoulders of giants. Now, I didn't. I think I stood on their toes. honestly, if anything.
Well, we all, I mean, it's like Keith Richards once said, I think I mentioned this recently, a great quote from him, Adam and Eve wrote the first song, the rest of us just rip it off. And there is this great conversation that we have the privilege, I think, of being a part of. So, but you pull that off just beautifully. I mean, it's the Fed by Sound sound.
Well, thank you. I mean, it started out as a kind of fun with numbers, if you will, right? So there's 5/4, and then it goes into 6/4, and then it goes into 7/8.
That was my very next question. Were you jumping about different time signatures?
Yes, time signatures, and then it's just a matter of, if there's any song that was kind of the guide for me, it was kind of like YYZ. Now, yes. Obviously, it's nowhere near as good as that. There's no arguing it. The virtuosity in YYZ is unchallenged, right? But how does that make me feel? Where does it take me? It goes on a musical journey. It rocks.
It does.
So that was one of those. I'm speaking specifically of YYZ, right? Oh. And so for me, that was my challenge. Could I do something that sounds not like a wannabe them, right? But still have elements of that I love, and things going on, and goes on a musical journey in the way that I really enjoy. So it was like, can I do it?
Well, and you're not alone in that. I mean, when did you get here has got everything I've ever loved about prog rock instrumentals, especially in the Yes Rush vein. In fact, I sent a copy just earlier today to my brother, who was an enormous influence on my musical tastes growing up. He's about 10 years older than me. And I said, give this a listen. This is a friend of mine. And he was very, very deeply, as I was. And he's not a musician. He's got the clean ear of the listener, and was just blown away, and rightly so.
Well, thank you for sharing it.
Yeah, well, it's an honor to be able to do that. And I want to say one thing before gratefully hearing more of your work: the humility with which you carry yourself, at least where your music is concerned, is all the more magnified by the incredible work that you produce. And thank you for your work. And thank you for the unfailingly affirmative presence that you've always been in my world.
Well, thank you. It's easy to be humble when you feel like a fraud. From very early on, for whatever reason, I never had that very common desire to go out and learn how to play catalogs upon catalogs of your heroes' music. There have been some songs that I've learned, a few solos that I've learned, but easily 95% of what I've played in my life was what I created. Or, was me trying to mimic in some way what I hear, right? So I'm not saying I'm original. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is I didn't take on the technical task of learning to play everybody's song and then having the confidence that I could play it.
Right.
And then pushing the ability with the metronome and having the discipline. When I try to sit down to a metronome and practice scales, I'm depressed in 15 minutes, more like 15 seconds. But I can do it for maybe 15 minutes. And after that, it just sucks the life out of music for me. It ruins it. So for me, it's like a kid in a sandbox. I just want to play guitar. And the result is I'm insecure. I don't know. I hear people play stuff all the time like, I can't play that. I have no idea if I can play it. I do what I do. So how absurd would it be for me to be cocky and full of myself when I have no idea? Man, I'm just trying to have fun.
And at the end of the day, if you're not having fun doing something like this, then we're doing it wrong.
I agree.
Yeah.
I agree.
Well, with that, friends, I take you to Always Find Me from the 2020 Imperfect album, an album that is anything but its namesake, by FEDBYSOUND. You're listening to the No Commercial Potential Show. I'm your host, Brad Wallace, and this is Cosmos Astrum Radio. Cosmos Astrum, come for the music, stay for whatever compelling reasons you might have all your own, but do stay. If you don't, you're going to miss this next future classic from tonight's guest, Mark GRIDER. Always Find Me.
Find me.
was Always Find Me from Imperfect, the brilliant 2020 album from FEDBYSOUND. I'm Brad Wallace, and this is the No Commercial Potential Show on Cosmos Astrum Radio. Mark, who were the main influences in crafting this piece?
Ooh, that's a good question. So the main part is in 6/4, so I don't know why. That phrasing just works for me. Occasionally I've used it. Main influence on that, Alice in Chains has done it, Soundgarden. There's a moment in there that feels very Soundgarden to me, but it's not like I was trying to sound like them. I was working on, doing my own thing. It's interesting that this is one of those songs for me that, could be interpreted or applied to a great many things. I got to the end of the album and, you start thinking about the big picture of life and existence. And this is really kind of what came out of that, right? The truth will always find me.
Yes.
Whatever the truth means.
Still running through my head. You don't have to remind me. The truth will always find me.
Yeah. And just, how that feels, the whole phrase of it is what it is. And, we can get into arguments about what truth even means. But I feel like without narrowing the scope of what the song means, because it means more to me than I could describe, it does kind of encapsulate that notion of, you can be lost in your head, you can say whatever you said, you can get confused, but ultimately the things that are real will flood back in. I mean, unless you're completely deluded, right?
And the jury's still out on that one for me.
Same. But I like to think that the truth will find me. It's a good way to go to sleep at night.
Well, I think it always does. And one of the double-edged plowshares, I guess, I didn't want to say swords, of a lyric like this is that, that can be taken as something frightening to some. The truth will always find me, but also a great comfort in that, in one very important sense, truth is never our enemy. And that was something that rang out for me on a deeply personal level on my listen to this song. I know this must have happened for you. I shouldn't say I know, because I don't. But the sheer emotive, artistic, and even the technical quality of what you do suggests to me that it may have. Someone at some point must have gotten in touch with you and said, Mark, your music strikes a very deep chord with me. It's important music to me, and it's important to me because of X. What was the song, and what was X?
The song Inside My Head. That's the one that deals with suicidal thoughts. I had several people reach out to me via private message, letting me know how important that song was to them and that they understood too well what the song means. That's the song that almost kept me from releasing that album.
Let's hear it. This is Inside My Head by FEDBYSOUND.
Inside my head, there's a part of me how I feel. All the years of misery flood back at once. And I wanna be dead. That's not who I am anymore. I wanna be alive. That's not who I am anymore. I wanna be alive. So this is my funeral. The part that wants to die. I can't say I'll miss you. I can say goodbye.
That's the song that almost kept me from releasing that album. I had already finished it. It was mastered. I started releasing singles. And when it came time to release the album, I knew that was on there, and that one, I'm okay. I've got no secrets, nothing to hide personally, but when you really lay mental health cards on the table, there is a percentage of the population that kind of, doesn't really like that.
Yeah.
And will look at you differently forevermore when you do that. And I didn't want my family to feel any negative repercussions for my emotional honesty. If I were just a soul alone in the world, flying through existence, I'm fine with anybody knowing what
Yes.
I feel or think. But because it can negatively impact the people I care most about, it really had me thinking that maybe I shouldn't. Obviously, I got support from my wife, and she's not worried about it. And it's a hopeful song. It's a positive song.
It is.
It does accept the reality of intrusive negative thoughts. But yeah, that's the one that really had people reaching out to me.
And justifiably so. What do you think it is about the reticence of so many to encounter issues in mental health?
I'm not sure, but my theory would be that there are a lot of people who don't have those thoughts. They're not sure how to process the idea of someone having those thoughts. And I think it puts them on their heels with regard to how to interact with somebody who can have those thoughts, because they don't want to find themselves in a position, if somebody could, take their own life, what does that mean? Does that mean they're okay with taking any life, and on, and you can just extrapolate down that path, right? And I think that there is a distinction in my mind between the two. However, for someone who doesn't experience that, I'm not sure,
I've wondered sometimes if it also perhaps didn't shine a bit of a light, or perhaps hold a mirror up to some, making it difficult to talk about or difficult to be with or encounter in that.
Perhaps, sure. There may be a percentage of the population that has those feelings but doesn't want to face them, or talk about it, be asked about it. They don't want it to be part of the conversation.
Right. Yeah. And which is one's prerogative. But that's fascinating, and it's wonderful to hear. In any instance, really, when an artist's work reaches somebody on a very deep level that way, and I know from experience how deeply moving it is to hear from someone.
Yes,
when a work has reached them that way. So it's and knowing you, I know what a powerful experience that would be. So. Now, the next and sadly, the last Fed by Sound piece we'll have the immense pleasure of hearing tonight is what I consider to be one of the great epics. I would liken to music I've heard by Tool, but also by Rush, rhythmically called Belief. As it's the last of your songs we're going to hear tonight, I want to talk about it before we get to hear it. So what is the central message that you hope listeners might take away from this incredible piece?
Ooh, central message? This one's quite complex.
It is.
So, how do I sum it up? It's interesting because I'm somebody who I would typically refer to as a person without faith. And yet, the more I explore that notion and you think about, society operating and living amongst other humans and the social contracts that exist in order to survive together, I had to come to grips with the fact that I operate on a lot of faith. Faith that, the person driving next to me is not going to just swerve and kill me intentionally. That if you didn't have some sense of faith in the statistics or numbers and the unlikelihood that, you're going to get attacked stepping out your door, hopefully that's your reality. But if you didn't have that, then you would probably vest up and grab a gun every time you went out in public. Right. And so whether or not you have faith, religious faith, I think we all kind of operate and work together in society. There's the notion that in order to work together and build a society, there is compromise. We've all got to give and take a little bit in order to work that through. There's also the notion, the questioning of religious faith and accepting that if I were born somewhere else, what would be the likelihood that I would have been raised in a different religious setting?
Yes. Yeah. There is a lot of sort of accident of birth at play.
Yeah. I mean, from my vantage point, that's so it seems.
Right.
If you look at the breakdown of the religions of the world, again, I think I said it earlier, but most people don't agree with most people about how things are and what's important.
And more so, dare I say, more so than ever, in the time in which we live. But Please, sorry, go ahead.
No, that's interesting. I think what social media in particular has done has illuminated the realities that existed prior. I mean, humans are humans. Now we're just way more aware of how we disagree. And
Right.
people are more vocal because it is easier to find echo chambers where they feel safe. And it's safer to speak out against people they disagree with. So it's an interesting condition of life, right?
Mm. Well, we span about the same time frame, you and I, and tell me what you think. My perception has been that not that long ago, there were fewer fundamentals over which people tended to disagree. In the realm of just living together, whether it's politics or how we relate in other ways. It seems to me as though we disagreed over fewer of the basic background facts, like whether existence is a simulation or whether the moon landings happened or the shape of the planet or what have you. It seems to me as though we disagree over a lot more than we used to. Do you agree with that or disagree with that?
I think you may be right. I think people are more vocal about disagreeing. I think what's interesting is politics has become more partisan, very much there's two sides of whatever idea is, and you have party alignment with whatever that side is. And from my perspective, there are a lot of things on the left that I'm like, huh? And a lot of things on the right that I'm like, huh?
Sure. Yeah.
And there's things that I agree with on both sides that I'm like, okay. But I don't look at it in party lines, and I see there's a lot more tendency to go party line, or at least there's a lot more tendency for the voices that align with a clearer differentiation between the parties to get amplified. So there is a possibility that there's a percentage of the population that's a little more balanced and wants to not just choose, the lesser of the two evils, but wants to find a more sensible middle ground. But at least in the U.S., I don't think there's a very good mechanism for fleshing out what that middle ground may look like and how to do it. We don't do a poll basthey on each issue, right? Mm-hmm. So either your party has this list of things that they believe, and you're going to vote that, and if you vote that party, well, that party looks at it as, I have this list of mandates, and you're just like, wow.
Yeah.
But humans, power, money, it is an age-old story, and it kind of, that's what's present in my song belief a little bit. It's a little more about existence, faith, civilization, and nuance, and the concept that things are not as we perceive them because there are power structures that exist beyond our ability to perceive them. And I guess that kind of sounds a little conspiracy theorist, but look at history. You don't have to listen to all of what Noam Chomsky says in order to pay attention to the fact that all the great powers, they tell their story and they're part of the story, and there's a reason some conspiracy theories exist that yeah, there's corruption. It happens, and we get gaslit like constantly. But that's not to say nothing is true. That's not to say reality isn't reality.
That's right. That's right.
Again, with nuance and being fair and balanced. Right. And I think it's okay to step back and analyze. And again, I mean, that's how I arrive at my personal feelings on organized religion. Do I know about the existence of God and metaphysical things? Like, no, that's neither here nor there. You can define that in whatever way, but in terms of, dogma and what people choose to prescribe to, it seems almost arbitrary as a byproduct of their place in time and place on the planet. But yeah,
well, there were shades of. Sorry, you were.
No, I was just going to say that's awfully dismissive of most people's core beliefs.
Yeah, right.
That makes me a great popular person, I'm sure. But I'm just trying to, for me, it was just trying to flesh out and see if I could articulate it in a way that rang true to me. And the idea that we're all a bit naive, right? Even me. I don't know it all.
Well, and again, back to that theme of the Mark Grider I know of questioning, do we even know ourselves? And which belies, I think, a great intellectual humility. This next one, Belief, rang along with the song Armor and Sword from Rush's Snakes and Arrows album for me, in a kind of way, albeit it's far broader and a much larger work than that one. But let's move on to it. Once again, you're hearing the No Commercial Potential show on Cosmos Astrum Radio. I'm your host, Brad Wallace, with the incredible Mark Grider of FEDBYSOUND. And from Mark's 2021 album, Understanding, this is Belief.
Like drawings on the walls of an ancient cave, display the way we humans behave. We act, we interact to achieve. We build systems that rely on us to believe. They need us to believe. Since the dawn of time, we've done our best to find some way to explain away things that blow our minds. We've done our best to explain away things that blow our minds. Find ourselves in a state of chaos, disorganized and feeling lost. We look around and the threats surround us. We got our freedoms, but at what cost? Since the dawn of time, we've done our best to find some way to explain away things that blow our mind. We've done our best to explain away things that blow our mind.
Justice or security? Are we protected with equal rights? Are these endowments just a fantasy? Is our only choice to fight?
Justify the things that we concede. I believe if only we could see the forces that control the world, we know we're all deceived. I believe. In the halls of a sacred place, it tells stories about the truth and the way. Are they fact? How should we react? And what kind of difference does where you are born make? And if we are all
That was Belief from the Understanding album by FEDBYSOUND. 10 minutes of musical and lyrical brilliance that has also made its way toward the top of the indie music pantheon for yours truly. I think you said at one point that you're not working on anything new musically at present, Mark. Is that right?
I mean, I'm working a little bit, but nothing that I'm consciously putting together. Wow, that's a lot of hemming and hawing.
Sorry, go ahead.
I've got a couple of songs. I have an album of instrumentals that are not nearly as cohesive. They're more, I would say, the opposite, right? So instead of cohesive emotionally and texturally, they're more exploratory, me trying to do different things. I don't know if I'll ever release them, but they're fun. And beyond that, I've been helping some friends with some mastering and whatnot, but I don't feel particularly creative. What's interesting is this album that I've been working on, I would say the last 6 months at least, has just been tweaking mixes, changing this, changing that, changing the energy, making the snare hit a little harder, do I want a little more bass? Do I want a little fuller? Do I want the kick to punch a little harder? And every time it's just down this endless path of contemplation. And well, this is different. Is one better than the other? I think that can kind of happen artistically. It didn't happen so much with the other albums. Those were a clearer path. Those were a clearer answer. So that's, I guess, why I feel kind of non-committal about how these are working. I'm happy with them independently, but as I assemble them and put them together, it's like, well, I don't know. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does, and especially in the contemplative nature of the work, and I would say a very meditative quality to what you do that resonates very loudly with me. So, Mark, thank you so much for joining us tonight. It's been an honor.
Well, thank you for having me.
It's been wonderful, and it's been especially great to talk to you, albeit technologically mediated face to face. You're not only a creative force of nature, but one of the sweetest guys I've yet encountered, and I'm so grateful that you finally acceded to my pleas and agreed to be our featured guest tonight. A special thanks to all of you who tuned in tonight. I was away for a while, but it's good to be back, and I and everyone here at Cosmos Astrum Radio appreciate every single one of you. You've been listening to the No Commercial Potential Show here on Cosmos Astrum, and this is your host, Brad Wallace, saying, thanks for listening, and be careful out there.